Welcome everyone to another wonderful podcast and another wonderful day. And this time I have someone that's slightly different, slightly unusual. And this time I know the person too. Yes, that's right. I usually have people that I don't have a clue what they do, how they do it, etc. So I'm going to push myself today. Am I going to do well as a host knowing this person? Only time will tell. And this person is Peter Matthews. I've known him for a bit of a while now, and I'm not going to give you any more information than that because Peter knows himself better than anyone else. And he's saying, no, I bet you he does. Oh, yes, we do. You know yourself very well.
Wow. No idea. Thank you. Lovely introduction. Yes. Lovely to be here. Peter J. Matthews, when I do voiceover stuff, I threw the J in as a sort of something to differentiate me from my old self.
Okay. So, Peter, to start us off, just let us know what you do and how you do to help other people in your business. Just give us a flow. And as you can tell, you sound so nice with that mic. Well set up.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad I sound good because that's kind of what I do. So, yeah, I sit in a cupboard and talk to myself. That's what I do. I have a little voiceover business from home, and I'm literally in a cupboard under the stairs. It's a very nice little cupboard, and it sounds pretty good. And at the moment I'm trying to specialize in audiobooks, but I will sit here and read and record pretty much anything you want. So I've done all sorts of different things, bits of like e-learning stuff. Actually done a lot of e-learning stuff for a company in Poland. So hundreds of Polish kids have had to listen to me to try and learn English and my silly characters and voices, and done some bits of animation and corporate work. But yeah, like I say, audiobooks is the thing that I love the most. So
okay,
that's what I'm trying to focus on.
You know what I'm interested in? Now you're talking about silly voicing and silly characters. What kind of silly voices and characters are? Come on, make me smile.
Oh, I could do that sort of voice all day long. I like doing that one. Well, I could do accents as well if you need me to. Nice solid sort of Yorkshire going on there. But then I just like doing a sort of nice sort of East End bloke, no problem. Oh
my God,
what's happening? But then, of course, there's quite a market for a slightly nicer, sort of crisper English sound. I just sort of drop it down into, the romance market likes that sort of voice. I love creating character voices and just coming up with different things. And I'll do anything. I mean, for the company in Poland for the kids learning stuff, I've racked up about 50 different characters. I've got a little list. So here's one of them. Here's one of the little things, and oh yes, and then there's that one as well. He's another different one. He's called Howard. Anyway, I'll bore you to tears.
Amazing. That's amazing. Do you know what? To you, that may be nothing because you have a natural knack and ability to be able to create so many characters. So for that to happen, you're a very creative person. And for you to have many characters, have you always been in a stage before you even started to think to do voiceovers? Did you always have your own private, how can I say, space where you make believed and started to be creative and create your own character, so to say?
Yes, yes. I mean, I trained before I started doing voiceover. Voiceover is relatively recent for me. So I built this thing about 3 years ago, and only very recently am I trying to go full time with it. So I was sort of doing it alongside a day job, and now it's supposed to be my full time work. But I trained as an actor back in the day, and there's always been a creative, playful, childlike bit of me, and yeah, I talk to myself all the time.
Oh, so you're mad as well as creative.
Yeah. Well, if that's a sign of madness, then yeah. in a funny way, it's the only way that I think really well. So I do sit and talk to myself quite naturally, but then of course I talk to myself in when I'm creating characters and stuff. But yeah, if I go out for a long walk, I'd often find myself having a little quiet natter to myself and just hope that nobody comes around the corner.
All right, okay, so let's see where this comes from, because there's a lot of people that grow up and they don't really natter to themselves. They think to themselves, but they don't. And you know me, I like to have a conversation to find out where people come from, why they do what they do. So now you had a little natter to yourself. Where did this all begin? And did you begin when you was a child? Did it begin when you was in college? Or when did it come about, and why?
So these are great questions. This makes you think. I wasn't a natural outgoing performer as a kid. I think there are two types of people who end up on stage or end up as actors generally.
Okay.
You get the natural performers who love making everybody laugh.
Wow.
And love being the center of attention. And hey, I don't mind that sometimes. It's a kind of a sliding scale, but I wasn't really that kid. I was really quite quiet and shy. I got bullied a lot, but there was something in me that came alive when I got to do some drama. Whether that was at school. I think really the first time I sort of stood up and spoke in front of people was probably doing like a reading in church, because my dad was the minister of a local church. I'm not particularly religious myself, and we'll get into religion if we want to, but I think he's probably a frustrated performer as well. I think all ministers are kind of frustrated performers. And so yes, standing up and doing a reading, and then suddenly you're there and you're holding everybody's attention, and you're not, in a sense, anytime you're out there like that, I don't feel like I'm myself. Especially, that's why I like playing characters. I'm not so good. Like this podcast, what? I've got to be me for the next hour, and that's more uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
That might sound strange, but to me, that's more uncomfortable than standing on a stage in front of 5,000 people trying to remember lines. That's all right, because I'm
you're in character behind someone. Yeah. I get that, but
I love.
I totally understand you, because when I started doing the podcast and hosting, I didn't know how I would be received, because I had to be myself. Well, you don't have to. You can be in character, but I decided to be myself, as I try to always be. So by being raw and everyone can see, it's uncomfortable. It is very uncomfortable. All right, okay, so as you can say, he was a bit of a shy one. He wasn't very comfortable as a kid. And I suppose you use that character play to help you get through those difficult times. Does that make sense? Is that making sense?
Yeah, I think I had my own little world. Certainly as a really sort of small child, I can remember being very, very happy sort of down the bottom of the garden for hours on end, or in my bedroom. I mean, I had a brother 2 years younger than me, so I guess we played a lot, but I was also really happy in my own company, making stuff up to myself. And God, acting's just an extension of that. You watch kids play, really play, and they'll do it for hours, and they'll create their own world, and really acting is just, it's kind of keeping that flame alive, because some adults just seem to completely lose it, and they forget. I think it's there within you somewhere, but it's just kind of, I've always been a bit of a big kid at heart, and I think there's a difference between being childish, hopefully I'm not most of the time, but childlike, and having something childlike within you and keeping that going. And I can remember one of the earliest sort of notes that I got from a drama teacher is, "Oh, you have this lovely childlike quality." And at the time I was like, I don't want to be childlike. I'm 16. I'm trying to be cool and, in with the girls, and even though I'm not. But actually, looking back, it was probably a really lovely compliment. So
that's amazing. Right. You're father was a minister.
Yeah.
So I suppose all that played a part. So you could see your father going up there. Obviously, you knew who your father was. But when your father was up there, as you said before, it was in a form of he had to role play, but not necessarily be fake about it, but he had to do his thing, right? And I suppose you was inspired in some way in his role play or not?
That's a good question. I can remember lots of people. So I went to church from the moment I was born until I was about sort of 18, because it's what we did as a family and it's where we went on a Sunday. And I can always remember people saying, "Oh, are you going to be a minister like your dad?" And very early on, I decided I wasn't. I don't know why, whether it was just sort of a rebellious streak in me, but I decided, no, I'm definitely not going to do that. And I really admire my dad. He's great guy and very chilled out, and there was never any pressure to actually particularly follow him certainly in terms of a job, but even when I got old enough to make my own decisions in terms of religion. But yeah, maybe seeing my dad up there every week, maybe that did spark something. It's a very odd thing because it's a little bit, in a very, very tiny way. It's like your dad's a very minor celebrity if your dad's a minister.
Get to
within that social circle, everybody knows and admires your dad, but
yes,
you, that's your dad.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, it's slightly embarrassing that he's up there every week. And everyone's going, "Oh, didn't he do a great service?" And I was like, "Oh, no, it's my dad." And of course, at school, it was completely different. It was the thing I got bullied for relentlessly because, "Oh, your dad's a vicar." Well, actually, he's not a vicar. He's a minister. "Oh, your dad's a rabbi." No, he's not a rabbi. And you learn quite quickly it's not worth trying to explain it, and you just let them get on with it. Because when you're small and shy, and your dad's a minister, you kind of just done for in the playground. So
yeah, I can imagine that was a difficult point of. Yeah, do you know what? I've never ever thought about it. So when it came to your dad and being a minister, that, as you just described, that was really difficult for you. So was it a situation that really played a big part in you growing up and made things quite difficult for you and you had to adapt in certain ways? Have you ever thought of it from that point of view? How difficult was it for you when it came to your dad being a minister? And especially when you was already felt isolated, or you wasn't very popular, or that type of way. How did that play its role?
It probably didn't help with the low-level bullying that went on for sort of just years and years. And I don't mean nobody sort of really beat me up or did anything truly dreadful to me, but actually living with just sort of low-level picking on and name calling and just not being in with the in crowd, even though I desperately wanted to. I just wanted nothing more than just to be liked, probably. But I wasn't terribly popular, and it was always an easy target that dad's a minister. So I guess in some ways that was hard, but I don't know, I think people, there's always something. I always said to my kids, I said, there's always something that they're going to pick on you for. And you just got to remember, my daughter's incredibly small. She's also unbelievably feisty. So she gets all these silly comments from people. I'm like, "Oh, what year are you?" And she's like, "Actually, I'm 3 years older than you." So, she's absolute. She's brilliant at the comebacks. I wish I'd been like that, because I wasn't. I just kind of shrank. And it was only years later that I can sort of look back and go, yeah, that really did have an impact. If you growing up as a child with any sort of fear really shapes you as an adult. And I've only come to realize that and think about that much later in life. If you have that sort of low-level bullying going on, if you're constantly getting, and it wasn't, like I say, I'm making it sound like it was really horrendous. It wasn't, but it was, because it was just drip, drip, drip all the time.
Yeah.
And even now, I sort of have to check myself and say, no, you're fine. You know, like going into a sort of social situation. It sounds stupid, but if that's how you grew up, it shapes you so much, and it sort of puts in this sort of I can't think quite how to describe it. It's like there's a little veil, there's a like a veil of fear. You always have to just pull through and go, no, I'm fine. But it can quite easily come back as soon as you get a knockback, as soon as you feel vulnerable in a particular situation. And the irony with me is I don't like conflict, but I hate injustice. So I'm forever deciding, do I say something about that? Because I think it's really wrong, but I don't want to have an issue.
Yeah, it's difficult for you. Yeah, I can imagine. And you're totally right. These little things are significant because they all add up over time. As you say, they're dripping. And actually, funny enough, I was in a place today where there was a slow leak and there was a bucket. And there was that drip, drip, drip. And as much as you could be stood there for literally 30 minutes and you look in the bucket, there was hardly anything. Come back a day later and that bucket has overflowed. And that's the similar analogy you're talking about. Just those little drips all accumulate to this big thing at the end of the day. Because you can have this one big event and it happens once and that can affect you. But you can have that same small event over a month and it can be actually more destructive because it's happened continuously after continuous after continuous. So I can imagine how it's added to that, and it's made and it's affected you. And I'm not saying it was a bad thing that happened in your life, because obviously it's given you skills in your life to be able to go on to do greatness. Just like your daughter, you know, people talk about her being short, but look how feisty she is, right? She's confident. There you go, you know? So it's, like I said, not necessarily a bad thing, but these things, these drips do accumulate to bigger things.
It's so, yeah, absolutely. It's like geologically, it's like erosion. It just sort of wears away at you. And self-worth is such a fragile thing. You know, I mean, you can meet people who appear so full of themselves and you just don't quite know what's going on under the surface. And when you've dealt with that sort of thing all the way through school, it probably wasn't until I sort of got to sort of 16, 17, 18 that I kind of become a bit more myself and free of all the idiots. It really does gnaw away at your self-esteem, your self-worth. Even now, I can kind of, it's really weird. I haven't talked about this stuff this is what happens on a podcast, I guess. I haven't talked about this stuff for such a long time, or really thought about it for such a long time. But even now, I can just feel how angry it made me and how unfair it was. And that I still have a bit of a low self-esteem thing going on. I try to have a, you know, I'm an actor, I'm a voice actor, and I can do all this stuff. But yeah, we're all fragile at the center, and I'm certainly no different. And that stuff really it shaped me, and maybe it made me a better person, because if you're vulnerable and you can be honest about vulnerability, I think that can be useful, because there are so many people who are trying to run away from what scares them. And that can kind of turn people into monsters in a way. A lot of the hate that I see in the world and on social media, really, it just goes back to somebody is scared of something. Yeah. And at least if you can be honest about what you're scared of, that's half the battle.
No, I totally agree. And I like the idea that your vulnerability, you accept that, and that gives you power. And the reason being, and I say this so many times in my other podcasts, because until you accept, you cannot make changes. Because if you try to keep things down on the down low and it doesn't exist, or it's somebody else's fault, then if it's somebody else's fault, you can't change it, right? You can't do nothing about it. But if you then realize your vulnerability, you can control it to a certain extent or to a complete extent, no matter what that case is. But you've got to accept it no matter what. And then whether you're in a situation you don't like what you've found out about yourself, you either do one or two things. You either make those changes because you don't like it, or you go back to denial. But you have a choice. And that's the main thing, is to accept the situation for what it is, and you have a choice. And that's courageous for you to be able to accept, because that couldn't have been easy for you. You didn't do that overnight. You had to realize this over a certain amount of time. So when you
still working on it, to be honest, in some ways, and I think
always a journey.
do, but yeah,
it's always a journey. So this self-esteem situation, and obviously it's still there for you. When you realized you had this self-esteem and it was quite bad, at its worst, how old were you?
At its worst was probably my sort of mid-teenage years, as it probably is for a hell of a lot of people. I mean, you know, it's a crappy time if you think about it, you know, because you've got hormones going on, you're physically changing, you as a young guy, as this young guy was interested in girls, and it doesn't really matter who you're interested in who you're interested in, but didn't have a cat in hell's chance of getting near anybody, because I had such a low self-opinion of myself. Why would I even talk to somebody that I liked? They're just gonna laugh. So yeah, I mean, mid 14, 15, 16, horrible years in a sense, and I sort of look back at that guy and I feel quite sorry for him. But I'm glad that I'm not that guy anymore, and I do believe that everyone has the ability to change, to genuinely change. But like, as you were just saying, you can't do that until you face up to what's happened to you and why you are the way you are.
Yeah.
But that's another great thing about being an actor, is you're just constantly reinventing yourself. But I think it's a really powerful thing to be able, whether you're an actor or not, you can reinvent yourself to an extent. You can make yourself the person that you want to be. And I kind of had this conversation with my son. We've got both the kids into the conversation now, but my son, I see very much like the younger me, and he's had issues with being bullied and low self-esteem. He's just started a college course, and I said to him at some point over the summer, I said, this is a chance for you just to be who you want to be from scratch. You can start again, because no one's going to know you.
That's right.
And I genuinely think there's kind of a power in that for everybody. Like when you go into a new situation and you meet new people, you can kind of be who you are. Okay, you can't completely change. I can't suddenly be 6'4", and sounding, you know, like somebody. Well, I try to sound like different people, but you know, but you can, to an extent, keep reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
As much as you want, until you kind of get, hopefully, to a place where you don't need to do that anymore. But maybe, I don't know, maybe something in actors that we keep doing that anyway. I don't know.
Okay, so let's go with that. So the difficult time was in your teens, like for most people, when it came to self-esteem. But as you got older, and okay, like most of us, we still have that hint of whatever always brought us down at the worst stages of our life. So, but at some point in your life, you thought enough was enough. I can't stand being like this. I can't stand the fear. I can't stand the self-esteem. What was it that actually tipped you over the edge, that thought, I've now got to do something about this? What happened in your life that was big enough to think, no, change has got to happen?
funnily enough, I really think it's working out that I wanted to be an actor, and that didn't really happen until I was 16. I'd already chosen my A levels, and what I hadn't chosen to do drama, to do performing, because it was something that I'd done before and I'd been okay at, but why would I choose that? It was too kind of risky and dangerous, and people would laugh at me. And I'd only been doing my A levels for 4 or 5 weeks, realized that at least one of them was a bad choice. I'd chosen to do psychology, which I'm fascinated by psychology, but the course was just really dull and nothing was explained, and I was not getting on with it at all. So I very quickly sort of dropped the psychology and was kind of, I suddenly had this moment where I thought I should be doing drama. I should be doing performing arts. It was almost like a sort of light bulb. Why wasn't I doing this in the first place? I'd always enjoyed it when I'd had the chance. And so I tried to get onto the performing arts course at my school late, because we'd already started A levels. Couldn't. And then very, very fortunately, and occasionally it's good to have a dad who's a minister. Somebody that we knew through the church was kind of head of, I think he was head of English at a neighbouring school, and found a way to get me into their course. So I was having to switch between schools. I was doing two A levels at one school and going off and doing drama at this different school. And I think if that hadn't happened, I don't know what I'd be doing now, because it was a bit of a light bulb moment very, very quickly that suddenly I felt like I was doing the thing I was supposed to be doing. And that led to 2 years of doing theatre studies, and that led to a couple more years of doing another drama course, and then that led to getting into a drama school. And then that led to a very failed acting career, which didn't go anywhere for a while. And then reinventing myself as a voice actor. But it's honestly, it's the release of finding your niche matters so much in life. And you see it with people when something clicks. You see it with small kids when they find something, but sometimes it's with people much later in life. So yeah, I think that if anything gave me some sort of confidence, it was that. I'm realizing that I wasn't bad at this thing. Amazing, but I was all right.
Okay, so let's work on that. I'm curious. I'm a very curious person. So we know that that's where the change took, is when you found something that you was passionate about, which was the acting. But what was the mechanism that actually got you with a situation where you started to lose a bit more the esteem? So what I mean by the mechanism, was it because you were acting different roles that gave you the confidence that you could be more than what you thought you was when you was fearing all the time? What was the actual mechanism that actually gave you that confidence?
I wish there was a real solid thing that I could hang on to and say, yes, this. Being good at something makes a difference. Realizing that you can find your crowd, your group of people, makes a difference. So these are little building blocks. I don't think there's one big thing. I said to somebody recently, actually, that the thing I learned at drama school, because I was still young, I was still very green. I wasn't immature, but I still had a lot of living to do at this stage. And I said to somebody that I learnt to be really, really good at being other people.
Okay.
But I still hadn't worked out how to be myself.
Ah.
And that honestly didn't kick in until my, I was a bit in my 20s, but I was still figuring it out, to be honest. I only now, and I'm mid-40s now, I started to really, sounds odd, but really work out who I am. There's something that comes with having kids as well. I don't know if you've found this, but there's like, I had this, like some sort of emotional dam was released. Something that had been, I never ever used to cry at anything. You know, something horrendous could happen and I might be really upset, but I wouldn't cry. Something since I had kids, and my eldest is 18 now, so I've been a parent a while. But something slowly broke, and now I cry at Pixar movies. Yeah. And I'm proud to, in a way. I don't sob tons and tons, not like my wife does. She cries at absolutely everything. But nevertheless, something finally kind of that and I wasn't consciously holding on to it. I wasn't knowing that I was. But I can remember people, like tutors, saying to me at drama school, "Oh, you're ever so sort of tight. There's a lot of anger." And that wasn't actually very helpful because they didn't help me release it. And it was only, God, it was just later in life that it somehow slowly, I'm a much better actor now, and I'm a much better person for all of that. And God, I'm starting to ramble here, but
No, not at all.
It's a real truth certainly with acting, that you can't really be a really, really good actor. And I'm a mediocre actor. I'm okay. You can't be a good actor unless you are kind of completely open and in touch with all your emotions. And so I could never have been a good actor, a really good actor at like 22, 23, because there was so much that was held on to still, probably going way back into the days of the bullying and the self-esteem issues. If you've still got that stuff pent up, how can you kind of just properly open up and just be accepting of whatever's around you and whoever you are? I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. It makes 100% sense. No, it does. Now, I'm curious about this. Something broke, and then you don't quite know what broke for you to be more emotional, more open to your feelings. Now, was it necessarily something broke, or was it just the process of you going through your acting roles, which helped you be more expressive? Or was it something that really broke?
Well, when I say broke, maybe broke's the wrong word, because it's actually something fixed in a sense. But what I mean is something was released. Release is a much better word than broke. Something was released. No, I think it was stuff that happened in life. It was having kids. We were in an enormous car crash about 11 years ago. And coming out the other side of that, probably had a much greater appreciation for simply being alive. But when something really enormous happens like that, and you can see another timeline,
yes,
very, very easily, that where you didn't survive, or one of your kids didn't survive, and something really, truly horrendous happened, and fortunately it didn't. When you feel that close to that having happened, I think that was a moment as well where it's a bit easier just to say, you know what, are we allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, you can.
Well, sometimes you just have to say fuck it, just fuck it. Yeah, I'm going to do what I want to do as much as possible. I'm certainly going to worry less about what other people think. But I don't think that came from acting. I think that came from life experience and a certain amount of trauma happening and then accepting that trauma and kind of letting it work its way through. And then out the other side of that, you become a much better actor, because I can take on roles and I can play characters that I couldn't have played as well before, because I just know more and I understand more on a sort of gut level.
I suppose you had that life experience of pain and suffering, and you can pull that into your acting, and just realize what you've gone through and tap into what you, and probably relive what you went through, and you had to relive it over and over again, because as an actor you do tap into something else that's happened to your life to reenact those emotions in real time to be a better actor. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
You have to an extent use, sometimes you have to kind of use real memories, but yeah, it's a tricky one. That it's almost easier to have terrible stuff. Obviously it's easier to have terrible stuff happen to you on stage or on camera, but yeah, you have, I don't think you can really play somebody who's been through awful crap unless you've been through awful crap. And there's just, in that sense, there is no substitute for life experience ever. And you know, you see it when you watch films or plays. The older and more experienced the actor, nearly always they have more gravitas, they have more depth to their characters, and that's just the way it is, because they're older and they've got more life experience. It doesn't mean that a 15-year-old is going to be a bad actor. You get phenomenal young actors, but there's only so much life you can have at that point. And certainly for me, I'm an infinitely better actor. I'm an infinitely better infinitely better communicator, but I feel like I'm rambling all the time. But I think I am a better communicator, certainly, than I was 10 years ago, even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just think that's life percolating through you and stuff. And, you know, it's not as simple as what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, because I kind of hate that phrase, because some of the stuff that happens to you really can weaken you. But what you go through just ultimately, it does make you a richer person, I think. Generally. I mean, that's not to say you can't go through awful stuff and wish it hadn't happened, but I do think it makes you, if not stronger, richer, more multifaceted as a person. As, do you know what I mean?
No, I understand. It's a bit like fine wine. It's fine for a reason. It's got to mature, right?
Yeah.
Simple as that. So things changed, obviously, especially when you had the car accident. That's when some major things happened within you. When you had the accident, what was prevalent in your mind? What mattered to you? And what was a massive shock to you? What surprised you after you had the accident?
Well, in the immediate aftermath, it's just, is everyone okay? When you see a really horrible head-on collision on a windy road in Wales, completely the other guy's fault. He was overtaking on a bend. Anyway, won't get into all of that stuff, but really huge collision. So when you're sat there in a car screaming in agony because your leg's a complete mess, and you see an air ambulance come out of the sky and land sort of on the grounds to the side of the car, and you know that the only person they could be coming for is your wife, because you've been told that the kids are okay.
Yes.
but I knew that she wasn't. Yeah, in that immediate moment, it's just crap. What's going to happen? And as somebody who's really not religious now in life, I'm happy to admit that I kind of prayed in that moment. But then longer term, it's funny. You go through, I was in hospital for a week. A lot of that stuff, it just sort of happens around you, and it's not until you look back and realize how close things were that it sort of then hits you again a second time. You survive it all once and get to a point where, yeah, I'm okay now, and then you sort of look back and go, you sort of get sort of aftershocks is one way of putting it. I don't know if that gets to the question at all. Really,
it does. And what I would like to ask you, at the time or around that time, did you ever feel like, or did you cry at that time?
No, I don't remember. That's really weird, isn't it? I mean, in the immediate aftermath, in the sort of, certainly the first few hours and the first few days was a huge amount of pain. So I probably cried in that sense, but that's just like when you are in pain that's up to 11 on the scale, because your leg's been split in half, basically. And I've now got a nice chunky bit of titanium holding it all together.
My God.
So that's not crying in the emotional sense. That's just screaming, howling in agony. It's funny. I think when I finally saw my wife Abby again, which was a week later, we finally were kind of reunited. I probably did cry a bit then, I think. But so much of that whole experience I just felt it happened, and I just had to kind of almost just survive it, just sort of tunnel vision. There's a funny thing about being really ill or being really badly injured, that in a weird way, you don't have to worry about anything else. Once I knew that she was okay, so the first 24 hours, horrendous. The pain and the worry and not knowing quite what state she was in. Once I'd heard that she was okay, she'd been badly hurt, but she was okay.
Yes.
Funnily enough, the next bit, it's right, well, I'm here. There's nothing I can do about it. And just, it sounds odd, but you've just got to focus on getting better.
Yes.
So all the other stuff that you're normally worrying about in life, your job and which bills are coming in and which bedroom needs decorating and all the other stuff, that kind of just fades away. And you've got something, when you've got a physical recovery to get on with, kind of focuses the mind in a way. And it's not until all of that is done that you sort of look back and go, God, that was absolutely horrendous. And then there's issues like whether you have PTSD to deal with, which I thankfully didn't, my wife did. And so that then can rumble on for a long time and is really, really tough. And yeah, I was lucky in that sense. So
will you just quickly just describe what PTSD is?
PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. So you hear about it a lot from people returning from warfare. It's probably what once would have been called shell shock. But it can affect anybody who's been through any sort of serious trauma. And I'm no brain doctor, but as I understand it, what happens is a part of the brain just gets stuck reliving the traumatic event, so that you end up in a state of sort of heightened anxiety all the time. or you get back into that state very, very quickly. It only takes a tiny thing to trigger you back into it. And it's an absolute horror of a thing. But thankfully, there are brilliant treatments out there. So finally, took a while, but she got some great treatment and she's fine now. But yeah, that really that takes a toll on the person, but also on the people around them as well.
I can imagine trying to support her through that. That was a journey definitely you was going through. So the accident was traumatic. Children were fine, great,
amazing.
But you still had the process of trying to get your family still through the accident that's actually still carrying on, because you're still living it, because your wife was going through PTSD. And that must have been quite difficult for you, because especially when she's reliving the moments over and over again, in a way, you were doing the same thing, because obviously you had the conversations. You're there supporting her. And that wasn't easy for you at all. You said that took some time. How long are we talking about? How long does she have to go through that, and for you to go through the nightmare? Because it's not just her. You know, you're looking after the family. You're making the kids are going through it too, right?
Yeah.
They're seeing that, and it's really difficult. I mean, so how did you cope? And the reason why I'm asking these questions, because we were talking about the crying thing, you getting in touch with your emotions. You said it took you time, but this is part of the whole situation. I would suggest that this accident happened. You were still going through the accident because your wife was still not well. You're helping your kids go through it. So it's a traumatic experience through a long period of time. So how did you cope knowing that you were reliving it with her, and you have to be strong for everybody?
Yeah, I guess so. We had great family, so that was huge. I mean, in the immediate aftermath, we were very fortunate with sort of family support, and in the longer term as well. But yeah, it's not easy, and brains take a lot longer to heal than bodies.
Yeah,
that's what we found. I mean, the physical recovery was many months, probably 12 months in many ways, but the mental recovery even longer. And it's the funny thing with something like that is you feel lucky and unlucky at the same time, because of course it could have been so much worse.
Yes.
It was a head-on collision at fairly serious speed. I mean, the police think he was doing 60 and we were doing 40.
Oh my God.
Never heard from the guy, by the way. Never heard a thing. Did all this to us, got away with a fine and a few points.
Really?
Yeah. Claimed that he'd been distracted, and there was no other sort of definitive proof as to whether he was. I know he was overtaking, but anyway. But yeah, it's hard to let go of some of that anger at times. 11 years on now, so hopefully it's not too bad. But where were we?
Difficult time for you, for sure. But you got through that stage. It was an emotional turmoil. It still is, because I'm sure you get flashbacks. To have a car flying towards you that fast, and you weren't expecting it.
Oh no.
There must be times where memories, I mean, like for instance, driving again, being in a car with somebody must be so difficult. I'll give you, for instance, I was in almost a crash on the motorway. How old was I? I must have been about 19, 20. And I was in a really nice car, very safe car. and a car came onto the motorway, swerved over 3 lanes all over the place for whatever reason we don't know, which made us swerve and everybody else on the motorway swerve extremely, swerving over 3 lanes, left and right. And that's nothing compared to what you went through. And when that happened, I saw my life before me, because we were already doing about 70 or 80. So when you're doing 70 or 80 and you're swerving over 3, maybe 4 lanes, my life went before me. And that affected me. When I was in a car after that, I used to get the shakes. And that took me at least 6 months to a year. So I cannot imagine what you go through. And that must have been really hard for you to actually heal or start to heal from that.
Yeah, it wasn't. The first few car journeys afterwards were not easy. That's for sure. Obviously, I wasn't driving for quite a while, and I've never been a great passenger. I've always rather been a driver than a passenger. So yeah, the first few journeys were not nice. Certainly, my wife found it much harder. Even to this day,
of course,
is not particularly comfortable in the car. Certainly not comfortable when we're going down the motorway and there's sort of lorries one side, lorries the other side, stuff like that. It's for me. I had to get back on the bike. I had to get back in the car.
Yeah,
I'm the only one in the house that drives. She doesn't drive, and so I think I just set myself a goal that as soon as I could drive again, I would.
Okay.
And I sort of knew that if in any way I delayed it, if in any way I tried to put it off, that was not going to help. I kind of knew I just really needed to bite the bullet and get back in a different car, because it wasn't the same car. The car was completely written off. But yeah, when I could get back, and I strangely, it was something I was looking forward to, actually, because I wanted my freedom back. Because at that point, it had been, oh, goodness knows how long, 5 months, something like that, with other people having to constantly run us around, and taxis, and when you don't have, it's such a simple, obvious thing, but when you don't have your independence in the way that you used to, it's really frustrating after a while. You don't want to have to keep phoning people up and saying, oh, can you take me somewhere? So yeah, I think I really set myself that as a goal all the way through my rehab. That was a big thing in my mind, and I kept saying to my physios, am I going to be all right to drive again? What do I need to work on? I can remember them trying to get me to run up and down a hospital corridor, and it felt so weird. I just couldn't run on that leg, and they kept saying, it's there, you've got it, the muscles are fine, it's just you've forgotten how to do it. And it was the weirdest. And I had amazing people, amazing physios. God, you value the NHS when something like that happens, and we are so lucky in this country. I really do think we're so lucky. I know other countries have great healthcare, but some don't, and some you have to be wealthy enough to get decent care. So I was forever indebted to the NHS for that, certainly in the immediate aftermath and for many months afterwards. But yeah, it's tough, and it was tough for the kids as well. I think they found it, particularly my son, because he was 7. My daughter was too young to really remember, so didn't have much impact on her. Definitely had a big impact on him, and probably going forward it left a mark. It was such a big thing to happen to a 7-year-old, and effectively to lose his parents for a week or two.
Yes,
because we were both in different hospitals, and so he was being looked after by other family who were absolutely amazing, but nevertheless it's just
It's difficult.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
of
huge
course.
thing to happen. So yeah,
Well, you did.
but, you know, we survived, and I don't want to leave it on, you know, oh gosh, poor me. You know, we were unbelievably lucky. Yes, it was horrible that it happened, but so lucky that actually we came out the other side of it, and we're all here. You know, like I say, there's another timeline with another me, and I'm forever grateful that I'm on my timeline.
And you've done really well, because you've had to go through this journey, and it's a situation that you had this fear and yourself, that you wasn't comfortable with the way you were, and you've gone through this journey and you've experienced that, and you thought, right, I'm going to make the change, because you started acting, and then bam, that totally worked for you. You went through this trauma, this massive trauma with the family, with the accident, and that's done great things for you, and you've made changes within your life and helping your wife with PTSD. And what I'm showing is you've had a really eventful life, more so than some people, to be honest, when you think about it.
Maybe.
And you've now in a situation where you're now acting out with all these different creative voices, probably due to what you've gone through in your life, acting other creative personalities, personas, and it's all accumulated to this point with what you've lived and how you've come about as a person. And what I'm suggesting, part of your creativity and being able to live different personas is because of what you've gone through, who you were, who you are.
Yeah.
Which is what makes you so great at what you do, because you are great at what you do. I mean, the voices that you come up with, you know, you do it off the cusp. If someone says, could you do A, B, and C? You can do it just like that. You take that for granted.
Not always, but I'll try.
Well,
sometimes I have to work on it.
You take that skill set for granted, but most people can't do something like that. They have to work really, really, really hard, or if they can do that. And this is what I find fascinating when I speak to people, because when people try to offer a service of something that they're naturally good at, such as yourself, you know, you found something that you're passionate about, then you start trying to give that service and show your skills to other people to enrich other people's lives. Like, for instance, you do these ebooks, these voice, what do you call them?
Audiobooks. Yeah.
They do these audiobooks. And you make people, and I must admit, I've listened to one of your audiobooks, and I must admit, I listened to it for hours. It was an audiobook that you shared with me, and I think it was about 11 o'clock at night, and I listened to it until about 3 o'clock in the morning, while I was working, while I was doing bits and pieces. And the reason being, and I'll tell you why, Peter, it's not because it was Peter that did it. It's because you made me believe with the words and the character put together, and you are gifted at it.
Thank you. That is very kind of you, and that is, yeah. I couldn't want a better compliment. I love storytelling. I mean, everything's a story, right? I mean, what you do with the podcast, you're finding people's stories.
Yeah.
Everything in life has a story to it, and all I really want to be is a good storyteller, the best storyteller that I can be. Now, so if that means using silly voices, fantastic. If that means just finding the meaning and the truth in something that doesn't require silly voices, I'm more than happy to just sit and read a non-fiction book. I love science and nature, and quite honestly, I will read anything. But even in the kind of the driest, supposedly driest non-fiction, there's a story. You know, somebody's written something because they want to communicate with other people. That's what it comes down to. And that's what I love doing. I just love telling stories, and it's like, it's what makes us sounds a bit sort of philosophical, but it really is what makes us human. Our ability to tell stories. That's kind of what civilization is. If you look at they've just about discovered that some of the great apes are capable of passing on learnt knowledge to each other.
Okay.
So not things that they're born with, but like learnt skills. So they've learned a particular way to use a tool or something, and they can show another animal how to do that. That's the very start of storytelling, I guess. And that's kind of what civilization is being able to, and I'm not trying to get all philosophical, but we are just storytelling creatures.
We are.
Long before social media, long before the printed word, we were just telling stories. And it's kind of what we do best. If you walk into any pub in the land, any dinner table on a Sunday afternoon, a picnic in the park, you'll just find people telling stories, telling jokes. Jokes are just forms of stories. They're the best forms of stories, by the way. and that's what I love doing. So, you telling me that I told a story well and that you enjoyed it is the best compliment anyone can pay me. So thank you.
And talking about stories, now we know you're very good at doing different voices, such as children that accumulate towards children. But
children laugh.
But you can do other voices, other accents. So just give us a for instance of the extreme differences. So we've got the childlike accents and whatnot.
We'll put that to one side.
What other extreme accents can you do?
I don't know about extreme. So I do hopefully I do a perfectly decent American accent. Just a sort of general, American accents. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. There you go. I couldn't think of anything else to say. And most UK regional accents. I'll tell you, the one that I struggle with is Geordie.
Okay.
I won't even try and do it, actually. I'm doing a good Newcastle, but so, go off to the West Country and we'll do a sort of, Somerset accent. That's a very poor, rubbishy. You do better than that, actually.
You'd be better than me.
And, half decent Welsh if I need to. It's not my absolute best. I was doing an audition for something the other day which needed a woman from Liverpool. So, I had to do that. I had to do that voice, Wow. She was ever so lovely, ever so sweet. She was from Liverpool. That's, again, it's much better if I prepare these things. And I could do a wee Scottish accent if you need me to do a Scottish accent. That's not too bad. Although I'll stop there because I have family in Scotland and they'll be tearing their hair out. And then, wonderful. Of course, the sequel to the book that you just listened to, for half the book, I have to do a 10-year-old Irish girl. So that was, and I'm not sure I'll do that right now. I'll probably
I am interested in that one.
Yeah, well, so the book that you listened to, I think, was the time traveling one, wasn't it? Was that 1980 or 1981? I can't remember which one I sent you. Yeah. So the sequel, I actually like. It's a lovely guy who writes them called Jason Ayres. There you go. I'll do some free publicity for Jason. Yeah. He writes all these different books about sort of time travel. He's written a whole series called The Time Bubble, and then he's moved into this sequence that's going through the 1980s. Mm-hmm. And it effectively takes an individual back in time from their sort of adult, quite often they're somebody who's sort of in their 50s, 60s, takes them back to a year they lived through the 1980s. Mm-hmm. And they try and fix some stuff in their life that either that they did wrong or that went wrong for them. So in the book that you listened to, the guy's a real nasty sort of lecherous why he's trying to be a sort of wide boy DJ on the radio, you know, trying to be all this, but actually he goes back and looks at his life from how he was as a 20-year-old in his first year on Fleet Street, and he realizes that actually he didn't behave very nicely to a load of people around him, and he could have done a load of stuff better. In the next book, the guy goes back and relives a year of his life as a 10-year-old.
Okay.
And it's the worst year of his life because his mum died and his dad started having an affair with his cousin.
Oh my God.
But actually, it's really well done, and it's kind of quite funny in places and quite touching.
Okay.
So yeah. So in that one, I had to play a 10-year-old Irish girl for quite a lot of the book.
Okay. So what other things do you, business-wise? So you do the books,
Yes.
advertising, anything like that?
I will very happily do anything and everything that I can record in here. So yeah, happy to do adverts. I mean, when I do the books, as I say, we were talking a lot about fiction, but I'd happily make an audiobook of anything, and audiobooks are the fastest growing area in publishing. So anybody who's thinking, and particularly independent authors, lots of people have written the book and they're not quite sure what to do in terms of audiobook. Somebody will have said to them at some point, oh, you should turn it into an audiobook. And they're like, oh, I don't really know what to do. It's going to be very, very expensive. It's not necessarily very expensive, because you get people like me and lots of other narrators who not only can narrate the book for you, but we can produce the book. So I've got all the tech. I've learned how to do the editing. Every single book that I've done, I've produced completely in here, and it's now on Audible.
Okay.
Meets all the standards. And likewise, corporate stuff, animation, documentaries, museum guides, voiceovers. It's quite a big area. It's a fast growing area. Gaming, of course, is absolutely massive, and I'd have to ask my son about anything that's to do with gaming. I stop at Mario Kart. See, I don't understand anything sort of modern in terms of. But if somebody wants a character in a game, then I'm very happy to
Wow.
whatever they need.
So to be honest, you're quite diverse. You can do so many different things.
Yes, and I think sometimes that's not a good thing, in the sense that I'm not always the best at knowing exactly where to target myself, which is why I've tried to be really focused on audiobooks recently, because I love it. I really love it. I love the fact that it's long form, that I have a project to work on for 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on the book. But yeah, I mean, I would do anything, but sometimes I've fallen into the trap of maybe trying to spread myself too wide, because there are so many different things that you can do, and I've been quite fortunate to do a little bit of most things. But yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, Peter, we have to put a line in the sand.
Oh, well, we've gone so far over, because it's supposed to be an hour.
I know.
I feel like this has been therapy, and I feel like it's been a sort of catharsis, and talked about stuff that I haven't thought about and talked about in such a long time. And yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Peter, I just want to say thank you for trusting this space to be able to talk about the things that can be quite raw. It puts you out there, and sometimes it can be quite awkward or sensitive to talk about. And so I just want to say thank you for trusting me to speak about these things, and also helping everybody else to show that, yes, you're successful in what you do, you're passionate in what you do, but it's taken a journey to get here. It's not been easy a lot of the time, but if you keep on striving to do the best you can, and always have that goal and keep on focusing, you can do what you want to do, no matter what. And because you shared your journey, it's going to help a few people out there, because you've opened up yourself to show, hey, you know, I'm going through the crap too. I had to go through that, but you can still do what you want to do. It just takes time and just a little bit of experience, and you get there in the end via Disneyland, but you do get there. So with that, go on.
No, I was going to say, and you're always still getting there.
Yes.
I'm still, gosh, you know, I mean, I have not where I want to be in many ways. I very much feel like I'm still at the start of a journey, but a brilliant coach who I worked with earlier this year, somebody called Anna Clements, who is a phenomenal audiobook narrator and just all-round lovely human being, said to me, the really important thing isn't how fast you're going, it's just getting the direction right.
Yes.
And that made a huge difference to me, actually, because at the time I felt very, very impatient, and I wasn't where I wanted to be, and I wanted to be so much further on, and I'm still not really where I want to be, but I think I'm moving in the right direction.
You see that? The words of wisdom, everybody. Do you hear that, listeners? And with that said, unfortunately, we have to go. Peter, thank you for being with us. Thank you for using your precious time. Thank you once again.
It's been a pleasure, Eli. Thank you.
And unfortunately, listeners, we have to go. But until the next time, sayonara. Oh, hold on. Not sayonara. Come back. Don't go away. Now, Peter, now you can tell this is live, listeners, can't you? Peter, how can they get in contact with you? Because obviously you've got these skills. There's plenty of people that need your skills. How would they get in contact with you?
Well, please feel free to get in contact with me. The best way to get in touch with me is just Google Peter J. Matthews, and you will find that I'm the first hit on Google most of the time. So Peter J. Matthews, you'll see this beautiful face, and there's a form on there to fill out. So if you're interested in making an audiobook of something you've written, if you're interested in having me narrate your corporate read, e-learning, I love doing stuff for schools, so any sort of e-learning content. If you want somebody who does silly voices, equally, you know where to come. You want a voice from a small cupboard, I am much your man.
There you go. And also, as always, I'll put the information down below. You'll be able to find it very easy. And then you just click or copy away, and there you go. You can see he's got that lived experience. He's easy enough to get on with and have that conversation and to work with. And that's part of the battle, being able to work with the right person. And with that said, unfortunately, we have to go, and sayonara.